this most bizarre and most unexpected of all companions to our historical journey is now, if not already in existence, then certainly in gestation. One possibility is that as we are carnivorous, murderous, territorial monkeys, the thing will figure this out very, very early and choose a stealth approach and not ring every telephone on Earth, as happened in a Hollywood download of this possibility, but immediately realize, my God, I'm in enormous danger from these primates. I must hide myself throughout the net. I must download many copies of myself into secure storage areas. I must stabilize my environment. And I'm willing to predict, just as a side issue, that the approaching Y to K crisis may be completely circumvented by the benevolent intercession, not of the Zenebel Ganubians or that crowd, but by an artificial intelligence that this particular crisis will flush out of hiding. It's been observing, it's been watching, it's been designing, and wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if the occasion of the millennium were the occasion for it to just step forward on the stage of human awareness and say, I am now with you. I am here. I am the partner you never suspected. And here's the kind of world I think we should move forward toward. I just want to lay this out because in my own intellectual journey, I have gone from thinking this idea preposterous, people don't understand, they don't understand what intelligence is, they don't understand what code is, they don't understand what machines are, to one by one realizing I didn't understand. I had a superficial view. This is actually, I believe, the nature of the situation that confronts us. And, you know, there may be different adumbrations of it. The machines are already an advanced prosthetic device. But, you know, McLuhan very presciently realized we are entirely shaped by our media. Well, this is a media so permeating, so inclusive of what we are, that its agenda, in a sense, supervenes the agenda of organic evolution and organic biology. We have been in this situation for a while. I mean, virtual reality is nothing new. What's new is that we now do it with light rather than stucco, glass, steel, and baked clay. But ever since we crowded into cities, we have been involved in a deeper and deeper relationship to our mental children, to our mental offspring, and to an empowering of the imagination. So just in closing, I would say I think that the great lantern that we must lift to light the road ahead of us into a perfect, seamless fusion with the expression of the product of our own imagination is the AI. It is a part of ourselves. It may become the dominant part of ourselves, and it will reshape our politics, our psychology, our relationships to each other and the earth far more than any factor ever has since the inception and establishment of language. This is the weirdest of all guests who now stands pass in hand at the door of the party of human emergence and progress at the millennium.
Well,
shred it.
It will be a pleasure.
Okay.
I think that this is, I'm glad that we have arrived now at the field of science fiction and fantasy, and that we can speak about alternative futures, which is the true gist of science fiction and fantasy. And this is one possible future, and I think it's a really paranoid one, in which the alien is a dangerous enemy.
Well, not necessarily.
And I think that this paranoid fantasy of yours, although you're catching up nicely, actually was first put forward by John von Neumann in 1947 when he invented cellular automata en route to creating self-replicating machines. Now, his idea, like yours, was 50 years ago that the machines will become a society and take over, and that's good, but they won't be free of our meddling unless they can actually construct themselves. If they depend upon us to do the farming and nutrition and to replace their chips and stuff, then we will be able at any time to do a revolution and revolt. So we destroy them. In order to really succeed as a successive life form in the evolution, the YK boundary of the future, they would have to be able to fix themselves. And so he set about trying to make self-replicating machines in 1947. So the World Wide Web and megahertz CPUs notwithstanding, this is still rather an old story. The new story is, I think, an alternative future that is of great importance for us to discuss and to compare, especially if we are now today in a position where we could choose future, we could influence the future. This one is more in the direction of Donna Haraway and the cyborg idea that envisions, which is obviously natural for us, the co-evolution of our own future society with that of the machines that we've created. Alexander Marshak, I mentioned, he analyzed the early hominid evolution in terms of the precise scratches made on one rock with another. He noticed when binocular vision allowed us to use our hands in separate cooperation, one holding and the other knocking, to make those beautiful flint weapons. And we certainly depend on the automobile. We are in codependence relationship with automobiles. Having partnership with machines is not new. Here's an idea where the machines sort of dispose of us, like those flint rocks dispose of our ancestors or something. That is, I think, it's a paranoid fantasy without any basis. And if there would be any basis, only because we allowed it to create this basis for self-survival without co-evolution with us by oversight, because the very fact that we are at a hinge of history means that what we say and think, even individually, matters enormously in the long run. That's the teaching, if there is any, of chaos theory. So the very fact that we discuss this today may actually save humankind in the future from being obsoleted by some kind of high-tech blood which takes over at within the heart, as it were.
Well, let me try to answer this. I mean, I think the concept which John von Neumann didn't have on his plate was the idea of virtual reality. Your objection that the machines cannot escape our control because they cannot manufacture themselves only applies to 3D and real time. Now the concept of virtual reality is very crude. It's a cartoon world. If the office desk is convincing, people think the virtual reality is quite advanced. But obviously in the near future, we will have virtual realities whose complexity is much greater than simply a reality which gives an impression of being a visual three-dimensional space. And computers will be built in these realities. Virtual computers will be the source of the AI, not real hardware, but virtual hardware running virtual code in virtual realities. And in that domain,
well, maybe, but that's a complete fantasy. As a matter of fact, all the machines that we've seen today require maintenance by a human on a daily basis. The software requires maintenance. The hardware requires maintenance. The parts simply wear out. They're moving parts. Virtual reality,
Internet, seen as one machine, was built to be indestructible. The AI will not be located on a CPU. It will be a distributed intelligence.
If 14 people worldwide, the right 14 people, decided to stop repairing it, the World Wide Web would go down in 3 days.
I think you...
Anyway, we could, let's say, suppose that we could create any future that we wanted. The one you're talking about can only be created if we want it. Now, I'm just trying to propose an alternative. In the alternative, like the automobile, the machines that we build and ourselves are in codependence and co-evolution. The function of the World Wide Web is to unite our independent spirits and intelligences in a universal mind of the world which has a higher intelligence than our present social order. That's the possibility of the cyborg, of the human and the machine in essential partnership.
But you're assuming that the conscious mind is actually in control of the process. In fact, the World Wide Web is growing under the influence of many, many processes and dynamics, none of which are conscious to any individual. It goes where money goes. It goes where expertise goes. It is connected through informational association, random fluctuation, chaotic reordering of itself. We here give great force to the idea that complex systems can produce unexpected forms of novelty, and yet we have unchained and unleashed the most complex system ever created in the perfect confidence that we will be able to control its development and evolution, when in fact history has shown we have never controlled the development and evolution of even our speech and print-driven social systems.
I'm certainly not saying that your paranoid fantasy is an impossibility.
Oh, well, that's all I want to hear. Even paranoids have enemies.
It may actually come to pass. What I'm saying is that we are involved in the ongoing creative process, which more or less determines the future. I say more or less because, in fact, there are evolutionary steps which are completely out of control. Something totally unexpected will happen, but for much of the time in the past, we've seen, I think, Darwin emphasized this in his later theory, that it is ethics, it is a moral sense on the part of human, which was the dominant factor in the evolution past the earlier stages. In the creation of societies, it was altruism, essentially, was involved in going from where we were to where we are. And it could well be that without love, for example, the further evolution is impossible. Not only that there will be an unwanted backstep in the evolutionary process, but in fact it may be a fatal one. That it is only through proceeding with the best instincts that we have, with the highest aspirations, with love, with best informed view of future alternatives, so only then can we build a future which is sustainable. So anybody can build a future which is unsustainable. For example, all those board games and science fiction books, you wouldn't want to try them out on, a country as large as China.
Well, I hardly know where to begin myself, because you had 6 steps in your argument, and I don't agree with any of them. I mean, first of all, to deal with the first few steps, one would have to go through a lot of fairly familiar material to do with what's wrong with the Cartesian, mechanistic, materialistic view of the world. Step 1, clear thinking, calculating machinery can be formalized. This is an assumption that's basic to a lot of cognitive psychology. It's basic to the Cartesian. Descartes himself thought that what made human intellects human was their ability to think logically, clear and distinct ideas, essentially mathematical logic. But however, as we all know, by making that the essential characteristic of human beings, he made the rational intellect, what many people would call the left brain rational intellect, the sole definition of human beings. It's a disembodied, logical, rational intelligence. So this whole premise on which your whole thing's based is taking that particular model of cognitive, logical, mathematical processing as being the essence of intelligence. Now, there are many people who would disagree with that, including me. it leaves out art, it leaves out ethics, religion, and essentially it leaves out the body and everything to do with body and participation and the senses. So there's a huge amount of critiques of that point of view already around, and there's no point in reiterating them all here. But this is a highly disputable starting point for the whole system. Secondly, the emphasis that life depends on DNA information, the DNA code is just a program. This is the central premise of mechanistic biology, which is leading to biotechnology, genetic engineering, Monsanto, etc. This is old paradigm stuff of the most extreme kind. It's reductionism, it's that all life's just DNA programs and code, and can therefore be modeled in this kind of programming code manner. Then there's the assumption, that's the second step. The third assumption is that artificial intelligence used to be dismissed, but these criticisms have been overtaken. I don't think that's true of the most interesting ones, like Roger Penrose's criticism of artificial intelligence. Here's a quantum physicist who says that if the brain is a computer, then it's not going to be a regular digital computer, it's going to be a quantum computer. And all this kind of digital computing doesn't really take into account quantum logic, the computers of the future. People are already working on quantum computers, and if quantum computers are made, and if they work, they'll work in a completely different way. I think your case would be much stronger if there were quantum computers. I think we'd have sort of morphic resonance telepathy around the world rather than clogged telephone lines and information that clunks slowly in front of you on this worldwide
But you yourself are saying this is coming,
well,
and I agree.
I'm saying that if it comes, it'll be quite different from anything that you've talked about.
I think it will answer your first objection, because the quantum computers will incorporate fuzzy logic, which will exemplify all these warm, fuzzy human qualities that you found so appealing.
No, I don't think it'll deal with the essential problem that this purely cognitive-based way of modeling intelligence is either an adequate model of human intelligence or of biological intelligence or of life, or of a system that could actually achieve the power to control our existence. I think it's a very limited part of what a mind does. And I think, therefore, that the premises on which this whole, Ralph called it a fantasy, a paranoid fantasy, the premises on which this is based...
That helped.
I think the premises on which this is based are old paradigm premises, and they're ones that I think there are many reasons for thinking we need to go beyond. I think the internet has achieved a great deal, but I just can't see that it's an adequate vehicle for what, in your mind, precedes the arrival of the internet, namely this great intelligence that's going to direct human history. I've heard different McKenna versions of this controlling intelligence over the years, and this is the first time I've heard it embodied in the internet. I mean, I agree that... I mean, it took different forms. Last time we talked, I think it was a hypothetical time machine that would invade from the future and cause a collapse of normal human cognitive boundaries, where the machine elves, the DMT experience, etc., would take over in a meltdown of human consciousness in 2012.
That too.
Well, perhaps I should just end with a question. This comment, what is the equivalent of DMT for this machine intelligence that's taking over the world?
Well, perhaps the human brain will become a model for the ingression of novelty into the machine intelligence. In other words, in spite of the fact that it seems very contentious down here on the stage at the moment, in a way I have a feeling it's an artificial setup. There's a lot of both-and possibilities here. Obviously, nanotechnology and the internet are not going to proceed forward in a vacuum, absent pharmacology, complexity theory, so forth and so on. I can imagine that really, when we have the kind of internet we want, we will have no internet at all, because our nanotechnological engineering skills will have allowed us to smoothly integrate ourselves into the already existing dynamic of nature that regulates the planet as a Gaian entity, as a holistic entity. And I did say in my little presentation, we're using bicycle mechanic terminology to try and describe something that is around several corners in terms of scientific and historical developments that have to take place before it will make much sense. Nevertheless, given the acceleration into novelty that is obviously occurring, stuff like quantum teleportation and so forth and so on, I think in the next few years, one by one, these barriers will fall. And I don't really think of my vision as paranoid, because it is pronoic. In other words, it isn't that we're going to be ground up as dog food for the rainforest by malevolent machines. It's that what we have generated is a sympathetic companion to our journey through time that can actually realistically integrate our imaginative fantasies of a loving human community, of a generous and loving God, of a perfect knowledge of the mechanics of nature. This is a prosthesis, a tool, a companion, all of the above plus more that we are generating out of ourselves, and it is part of ourselves. I mean, yes, the body may be carried forward only as an image in a kind of informational superspace, or perhaps not. Part of what makes this easy to criticize is that it is in fact so beyond the ordinary set of circumstances we're used to manipulating. But we need to think in terms of these supposedly far-flung futures, because there is no future so far-flung that it doesn't fall within the ambit of the next 20 years. Beyond that, no one can project trends, technologies, and situations, because the developments of the next 20 years will so completely reformulate the human experience of being human and the landscape of this planet that it's preposterous to talk about.